Hello and good evening, and good night, or good day. No matter when you're trying to get to sleep, you need something soothing. And I know a lot of you listen to podcasts. I know I do. And that's where I got the idea for this podcast. It's an offshoot of my solo podcast, Edwin Salmon of Knowledge. But still, knowledge is key. What knowledge? Film knowledge. That's right. I'm going to talk about movies, or films, or flicking pictures, as they used to be known hundreds of years ago, when they were just a dream in a caveman's head. This is a podcast to teach you about the films. That's right, I said the films. That's what we call movies here in Era. That's the Irish for the Ireland that I live. My name is Edwin Salmon. I like movies, or as we call them here in Ireland, films. That's Filums. So, what I'm going to do in these podcasts is read the Wikipedia pages about movies that I enjoy. Now, if you've ever been on Wikipedia, or even Wikipedia, I'm sure you know how it goes. You have a main page about a main thing, and it has highlights. And the highlights are links to other things. Branching knowledge from the tree of knowledge that is the main page. When these blue highlighted lines come up, I will not click on the links. I will talk about those things in as much knowledge as I can. If I have no knowledge of those things, I will just make something up off the top of my head. Hopefully it will be funny. Sometimes it won't. But always soothing. So, shall we go on this journey, if you will? Maybe some of you are asleep already. If so, good night. And to the rest of you, tuck up, get warm. Don't drink coffee. Coffee's for the daytime. Drink hot milk or hot chocolate. Anything hot or reasonably warm. So, The Irishman, titled on screen as I Heard You Paint Houses, is a 2019 American epic crime film. Epic crime film is a film that is epic in scope and about crime. And this one certainly is, as it's very long, not as long as Goodfellas, or as long as Casino. I guess Casino and Goodfellas are about epic crime, the way The Irishman is, but they're also about other things, such as themes of growing old, themes of belonging, and themes of themes. And that's just the music. Directed and co-produced by Martin Scorsese, and I think that's how you say his name. Some people say Scorsese, and some people say Scorsese. I'm sure Martin Scorsese or Martin Scorsese would be sound about it if you met him in real life and said either. The Irishman is written by Stephen Zaillian, whom I know won an Oscar for Schindler's List, which was another book adaptation. The Irishman is based on the 2004 non-fiction book I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt. I have not read that, and I don't know much about Charles Brandt except to say that he's a journalist. My inflection at the end means I'm questioning. It stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci, the powerhouse triumvirate. And on the poster, just to talk about the poster as you can't see it, but it's on the page, the poster has Joe Pesci on the left, De Niro in the middle, and Jimmy Hoffa on the right, or aka Al Pacino. I'm sorry, he just disappears so completely into the role of Jimmy Hoffa that I forget it's actually not Jimmy Hoffa. They found him and he's alive somehow, and he wants to be in The Irishman, playing himself. No, of course, it's Al Pacino. And he's faced looking left. De Niro and Joe Pesci are looking right. No one is looking at each other. And Pesci is the biggest out of all of them, which is funny and ironic, as he's a very small man. The film also stars Ray Romano, Bobby Cannavale, Anna Paquin, Stephen Graham, and Harvey Keitel in supporting roles. So Ray Romano, obviously from Everybody Loves Mr. Romano, his famous sitcom, and he also played a woolly mammoth in the Ice Age movies. And he talks in that, "Hey, I'm gonna go extinct." That's not what he sounds like. Bobby Cannavale, who has been in numerous movies and TV shows. He was quite excellent in Boardwalk Empire, where in one scene you get to see his penis. Anna Paquin. Anna Paquin, of course, was the youngest recipient of the Best Supporting Actress Award. I think she was maybe 8, 9 or 10. One of those ages. There's very little difference between them. Stephen Graham. Stephen Graham, of course, is from Liverpool and has been in numerous movies, including Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. And Harvey Keitel. Okay, so Harvey Keitel, obviously from Mean Streets, which was more a crime film than an epic crime film. Mean Streets was the first crime movie, gangster movie, if you will, directed by Mr. Scorsese. And it's about guys who are kind of on the outside of the crime families and who want to get in and get more power. Whereas The Irishman is about the powerful guys. The film follows Frank Sheeran, played by De Niro, a truck driver who becomes a hitman involved with mobster Russell Buffalino and his crime family, including his time working for the powerful teamster Jimmy Hoffa. So De Niro playing a truck driver who becomes a hitman, or a hitman. Now that is quite the career change. I mean, most career changes are, I was working in finance, but then I set up my own company working from home, making candles and scented pillows. Not, I'm fed up of driving this truck, I think I'll become a hitman because of my skill at hitting people with bullets. In September 2014, following years of development hell. Now, what development hell is, for those who don't know, it is when a movie is trying to get made, is being developed, and never gets made. It's like someone trying to craft an ashtray in a arts and craft class, and they just keep working it too much and it falls apart and they can't finish it off in the oven. Now, this podcast will be full of terrible analogies, just like that one. The Irishman was announced as Scorsese's next film after silence in 2016. Now, shut my mouth, but I've never actually seen that movie because I heard it was long and powerful and maybe a bit hard going and maybe depressing. So I haven't seen it, even though I like the people in it. I want to say that Adam Driver is in it, and I have. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? De Niro, who also served as producer, and Pacino were confirmed that month, September 2014, as was Pesci, who came out of his unofficial retirement to star after numerous requests. Principal photography began in September 2017 in New York City and in the Manola and Williston Park sections of Long Island. Wow, that's very specific. I mean, I'm not that familiar with Long Island, but for those who are, you might be going, oh, Manola and Williston. I jog by there sometimes with my dog. The film wrapped in March 2018. Scenes were filmed with a custom 3-camera rig to help facilitate the extensive de-aging digital effects that made De Niro, Pacino, and Pesci appear younger. So, de-aging is highlighted there. De-aging is when you don't want to be old anymore, and you say to Hollywood, make me young again. And they put you in the pool of life and reinvigoration, favoured by Batman villain Ra's al Ghul. And then you come out refreshed to shoot scenes in specific parts of Long Island. Now, de-aging, the first time I ever saw it in a movie was in that terrible, terrible X-Men movie, X-Men 3, The Fall of the X-Men. There is a scene in that where Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen turn up in their clunky knight armour with their swords to talk to a very young Jean Grey. And they looked weird. They looked very kind of strangely, overly smoothed. They basically looked like Nicole Kidman in The Undoing. Have you seen The Undoing? It's not very good. You can hear all about it in my podcast, Edwin Samet of Knowledge. Why not give that a go after this? It's not as soothing, but it's probably funnier. With a production budget of 159 million to 250 million and a runtime of 209 minutes, that's a lot of minutes, it is the longest and most expensive film of Scorsese's career. And that is surprising because, like, normally 159 to 250 million movie has got superheroes in it, not really old men trying to act young under layers and layers of presumably and definitely, as we look at the budget here, very, very expensive digital effects. The Irishman premiered at the 57th New York Film Festival and had a limited theatrical release on November 1st, 2019. I watched it in its limited theatrical release, which is basically one of Martin Scorsese's caveats, if you will, when he signed up to Netflix, because Netflix were like, look, we apparently, for some reason, have lots and lots of money to spend on this epic crime film. So, and he said, yes, but I don't want it just to be digital. I want it to be in the cinemas too, alongside those other things that aren't movies, but are definitely popular. So, should I get into Scorsese's, I won't say hatred, because that's a strong word. I think he doesn't like the Marvel movies because they are a little bit kind of, they're well made, but they're products. And I've seen all of them, and I like the characters and everything, but when I watched, or even when I watched Avengers Endgame, I didn't tear up because, spoiler alert, character died, or spoiler alert, character put on weight and was sad. Was that funny? Yeah, it was, but in a sort of an old school 1980s way, where lots of things are funny, like in that aren't funny anymore, like in Crocodile Dundee. Australians were hilarious back in the 80s, not anymore, and Australians grabbing the crotch of a member of the trans community was deemed funny, but not anymore. But we can look back and laugh at how stupid all of that stuff was, and also it's of its time. Now, digital streaming on Netflix started on November 27th, 2019. Oh, a red letter day in the history of the movies. I had watched it on Netflix. I will say Netflix put it up as a movie, and some people immediately on Twitter and other things were saying, here's how to watch it as a 4-part miniseries, which probably annoyed Scorsese more. I think it would have annoyed him more if it was cut up into a miniseries and they digitally put superhero costumes on all the lead characters. So it played like a really long, slightly violent slowly paced Marvel movie. It received universal critical acclaim. Well, not universal, because Cara has not praised it. But then again, Cara has not seen it. So maybe once she sees it, she shall lavish praise upon it. Who knows? Who knows if she ever will? Probably not. Just to prove a point. And that is why I love her so. Praise for Scorsese's direction and the performances of De Niro, Pacino and Pesci. The film received numerous accolades at the 92 Academy Awards. It's Academy Awards night, number 92. Now, an overlong, slowly paced movie with epic shots and wonderful orchestra performing background music definitely makes it a fit for the Academy Awards. Tish. It received 10 nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Pacino and Pesci, and Best Adapted Screenplay. No nomination for Robert De Niro, who is probably the most understated, subdued character he's ever played. His performance is a man who can't express himself and can't express love to his family, but is confused when his family kind of turn on him just because he's been killing people for the mafia. I mean, come on. He hasn't been verbally and physically abusing them. But they can't square that away into that round hole that is a family man. Whereas his character thinks he's doing everything for his family. In fact, he is doing it for his family. And then he doesn't have a family. So it's quite sad. But then again, he is a multiple murderer. It was also nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. And at the 77th Golden Globe Awards, it was nominated for 5 awards, including Best Motion Picture, Drama, while it earned 10 nominations at the 73rd British Academy Film Awards, including Best Film. Now, it won none of these awards, but hey, it was still successful, I reckon. We've no way of knowing what it made. It made very little at the box office, but how good was it for Netflix and their streaming? Anyway, here's the plot. Possible spoilers. In a nursing home in his wheelchair, Frank Sheeran, an elderly World War II veteran, recounts his time as a hitman for a crime syndicate. In 1950s Philadelphia, Sheeran works as a delivery truck driver and starts to sell some of the contents of his shipments to local gangster Skinny Razor. Probably not his real name. Have you met my son, Jonathan Razor, and my wife, Mary Razor? The Philadelphia crime family is headed by Angelo Bruno. Mr. Bruno, who has a first name for a second name. After the company Sheeran works for accuses him of theft, union lawyer Bill Buffalino, who is a quarter Buffalo, he traced it on his family tree, gets the case thrown out after Sheeran refuses to name his customers to the judge. Bill introduces Sheeran to his cousin, Russell Buffalino, head of the northeastern Pennsylvania crime family, played by Joe Pesci. Sheeran begins to carry out jobs for Russell, as well as members of the South Philadelphia underworld, including painting houses, a euphemism for murder or contract killing. Soon, Russell introduces Sheeran to Jimmy Hoffa, played by Al Pacino, head of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. What a brotherhood. No sisters in there. Who has financial ties with the northeastern Pennsylvania crime family and is struggling to deal with fellow rising Teamster Anthony Tony Provanzo. That's it. Played by Stephen Graham, who is from Liverpool in England. As well as mounting pressure from the federal government. That federal government, always mounting pressure. Hoffa becomes close with Sheeran and his family, especially his daughter Peggy, and Sheeran becomes Hoffa's chief bodyguard. Of all the bodyguards, he is the chief. He has many braves, but he is the chief. After the 1960 election of John F. Kennedy, okay, here's my impression of John F. Kennedy, because it's highlighted in red, or in blue. Some of the things are highlighted in blue that I'm not going to go into too much detail, because some of them are like World War II, and I'm just skipping over those. Just a little kind of post note here as we enter the next paragraph of this description of the plot. Okay, I'll just read the next bit in a John F. Kennedy voice. Russell is thrilled while Hoffa is furious. Kennedy's brother, Robert Kennedy, who was named Attorney General, forms a Get Hoffa squad to bring down Hoffa, who was eventually arrested and convicted in 1964 for jury tampering. Get away from that jury. Stop tampering with that jury. If you break the seal on that packet of jury members, then your warranty is void. No, your statutory rights are also affected. I don't care if you don't know what they mean. No one knows that. While Hoffa is in prison, his replacement atop the Teamsters, Frank Fitzsimmons, Fitzsimmons is very Irish, begins overspending the Labour Union's pension fund and making interest-free loans to the mafia. Hoffa's relationship with Tony Pro, himself arrested for extortion, also deteriorates beyond repair. Hoffa has his sentence commuted by President Richard Nixon in 1971. I will commute your sentence, Mr. Hoffa. Although he's forbidden from partaking in any Teamsters activities until 1980. Wow. So Nixon's like, okay, Jimmy, you can get out. I'll commute your sentence, but you can't do any Teamster stuff for, say, 10 years. And he goes, oh, that's a long time. Oh, make it less. Okay, 9 years. Despite his parole terms, Hoffa undertakes a plan to reclaim his power atop the Teamsters. Hoffa's growing disrespect for other Teamster leaders and related crime family interests begins to worry Russell. During a dinner in Sheeran's honour in October 1973, Russell tells Sheeran to confront Hoffa and warn him that the heads of the crime families are displeased with his behaviour. Hoffa then informs Sheeran that he knows things that Russell and the other Dons are unaware that he knows, and further claims that he is untouchable, or if anything ever happened to him, they would all end up in prison. So he's doing the I know a few things that you don't know that I know, and I also know things that you don't even know. So you couldn't know that I know these things, because you have no knowledge of them to begin with. You have to have prior knowledge of a thing, and know that another guy knows it, in order to know that he knows what you know, and what I know, and also what I don't know, and what you don't know that I know, will be known if anything happens to me. You know? That old plan. I mean, that leads to the famous scene where he's like, De Niro's like, he told me to tell you, it is what it is. It's what it is. It is what it is. What is it? You know what it is? I don't. Come on now. Look at the way I'm looking at you, and I'm going, it is what it is. Do I have to put a gun to my head with like or a finger to my cown? That's head, Irish for head. Why did I say cown there? Sometimes the Irish words get in there. So he warns him in a nice way. So, in 1975, while on their way to Bill's daughter's wedding, Russell tells Sheeran that the Dons have become fed up with Hoffa and have sanctioned his murder. Reluctantly, Russell informs Sheeran that he has been chosen as the trigger man, knowing he might otherwise try to warn or save Hoffa. The two drive to an airport where Sheeran boards a plane to Detroit. Hoffa, who had scheduled a meeting at a local diner with Tony Pro and Anthony Gialcone, is surprised to see Sheeran arrive late with Hoffa's unsuspecting foster son, Chucky O'Brien, and gangster Sally Buggs. Chucky O'Brien is such a funny name. Like, no one calls their son Chucky, and not like a lot of these names they've got names with, like, you know, Fitz or Jimmy the Rooster, and, you know, they're in inverted commas, and I like, this is the first one where the first name should be in inverted commas. It's like his name is not a real name, it's a nickname, and you don't get a nickname assigned at birth. You're not christened with a nickname. Anyway, I can't get over Chucky O'Brien. So Chucky O'Brien and Sally Buggs, they advise Hoffa that the meeting was moved to a house where Tony Pro and Russell are waiting for them, and he joins them in the car. Entering the house, Hoffa finds it empty and realises that he has been set up. He turns around to leave, at which point Sheeran shoots him twice at point-blank range before leaving the gun atop his body near the entrance. After Sheeran departs, two younger gangsters have the body cremated to eliminate all traces of him. Now, so that's basically the end of the movie. Or, well, it's near the end of the movie. It's the, you know, it's a climactic point. Because the movie goes on and you see the characters in old age. And I particularly like that scene. I like the way it's shot and the way it's set up, because you get these like high shots looking down at the car driving down this kind of very innocuous suburban street in Detroit, and just like, you know, normal houses and stuff, and they repeat the kind of, you see the same shots in the journey to and from, and it's very good and like quick and shocking. There's nothing very glamorous about any of the violence in this movie. It's all very sort of matter of fact. As a matter in fact, and as a matter of fact, it's all very matter of fact. Okay. After taking the Fifth Amendment, which is like, I think the Fifth Amendment is, and why Sheeran, Russell, and Tony Pro and all these guys would take the Fifth is, as is my understanding of the Fifth Amendment. Fifth Amendment is, the government cannot force you to talk about a murder that you were involved in, because on the grounds that it might incriminate you. So they all take the Fifth. That's clever. In a grand jury investigation into Hoffa's disappearance, so Frank, Russell, Tony Pro and others are eventually convicted on various charges unrelated to Hoffa's murder. It's like when an actor wins an Oscar because they're old and they should have won one for maybe 10 or 15 years ago when they were at the height of their powers. So they're just given, you know, like when Al Pacino won for Scent of a Woman, when he should have won for numerous movies before that, Godfather 2 especially. So, where were we? One by one, the now elderly gangsters begin to die in prison. Sheeran is eventually released and placed in a nursing home. And that's kind of sad. In fact, one of the most shocking things in it was when Joe Pesci was in the nursing home. Well, they're all in prison, and they're all dying in prison. But you know, they're still being in prison, and being a gangster is kind of like being in a nursing home, because there's not really a lot of, like, you can bribe people, like in Goodfellas, when they're all living in their own kind of squat, basically their own quarters, and they have their own kind of gaff almost. You're not like, going to the toilet in the corner, terrified of your cellmate. It's kind of like, it's like a retirement home, but you can't actually go anywhere. But there's the last shot of Joe Pesci's character before he dies, very matter of fact, out in the exercise yard, and Frank's talking to him, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's got like no teeth, and he looks very old, and I suppose it's like Joe Pesci, and they've just kind of aged him a little bit, but it's really well done. And he kind of reminded me of like an amalgamation of my grandparents, as in my mother's parents. he looked like the two of them together in one wheelchair. And I was like, it was weirdly shocking because for a second I was like, is that what Joe Pesci really looks like now? Because it's been so long since he was in a movie. And, you know, he's kind of old. He's too old to have that facial hair that he has all the time. Because it's too well groomed. It's like, what's his name? The Boomtown Rats singer. Just give us your fucking money. Bob Geldof. There we go. Just couldn't think of it. Another night. He put on his armour and he went, people are dying, just give us your fucking money. Now, Sheeran is eventually released and placed in a nursing home. He tries to reconcile with his alienated daughters, but Peggy, suspecting his involvement in Hoffa's disappearance, severs all contact with them. Sheeran begins seeing a Catholic priest assigned to the nursing home who gives Sheeran absolution for crimes committed over his lifetime. Ah, the Catholic Church. Do whatever you want and get absolution at the end. And straight into heaven. And like, wait. It's like trying to get into an exclusive nightclub. And it's like, oh no, I got a wristband. I got an absolution wristband. It's a sparkly pink one. Oh, okay, and you go. They're like, hey, come on, I've done loads of good stuff. He's a fucking hitman. He's got the absolution wristband. Oh, okay. I've only got the normal life. Died suddenly without absolving my sins or having them absolved by a priest. Lucky him. As the priest leaves, Sheeran asks him to leave the door slightly ajar, emulating one of Hoffa's habits. Oh, I didn't get that. I didn't realise that Jimmy Hoffa liked to let all the heat out of a room by leaving the door slightly ajar. I thought it was just like because he was alone and going to die alone in an elderly nursing home. So, the main cast, there's lots of, notable. Anyone notable that I didn't? Stephen Van Zandt as Jerry Vale. I didn't realise Stephen Van Zandt was in it. Stephen Van Zandt, who's in the E Street Band with Bruce Springsteen and also featured in The Sopranos, was in The Irishman. Interesting. Jesse Flemons as Chucky O'Brien. Jesse, great actor, had the best name. Here's an interesting one. As I've lost it now. Bear with me. Reading Wikipedia. I'm singing about Wikipedia in smaller roles. As a friendly lounge bartender, Robert Fonero. Jake Hoffman as Alan Dorfman. Ken Clark as James P. Hoffa. Peter J. Fernandez as Cecil B. Moore. Daniel Jenkins as E. Howard Big Ears Hunt. Kevin O'Rourke as John McCulloch. And a comedian played a comedian. Where I was reading that there and I just couldn't find it. Action Bronson as a casket salesman. There's an actor called Action Bronson. That is weird. His parents must have named him after what every director said to Charlie Bronson before a take in every movie that he ever made. Jim Norton as Don Rickles. That's what I was looking for. Because Don Rickles had passed in 2019. I think he passed like a month or so before they started shooting it. And he was, 90, I think he was. At least 90. And, of course, he was in Casino. One of Scorsese's other, quote-unquote, crime epics. So, development. Here we go. I went to the production part of the Wikipedia. In an interview with The Guardian, Scorsese mentioned that the original contemplation of this project started in the 1980s. stating Bob and I had tried for many years to come up with a project. This one actually started about 35 years ago with the idea of the remake of The Bad and the Beautiful and the sequel 2 Weeks in Another Town. I've never seen The Bad and the Beautiful. I know that Scorsese loves it and he's always talking about it. And I've never seen the sequel, 2 Weeks in Another Town, which was remade as the Irish film A Fortnight in Athlone. Somehow we exhausted that idea, he says. Afterwards, Scorsese approached De Niro with an idea to do an aging hitman story, which did not move forward. Just a general idea, I think they had. De Niro then revived that old discussion and got the project underway, quotes, after reading a copy of the 2004 book, I Heard You Paint Houses. With Scorsese saying that De Niro, quote, became rather emotional as he told him about the lead character. Yeah, this lead character is going through a lot of things, and he's can't connect with his daughters. Scorsese then became interested in directing a film adaptation of the book and casting De Niro, Al Pacino and Joe Pesci. The Irishman started its development phase in 2007. New plot materials and rewrites caused the movie to lose its place in the film release calendar, and Scorsese went on to direct 3 more films, Hugo, 2011, which I've never seen. I know it's a 3D movie. I don't like 3D movies. And also, I don't know what the hell it's about, and I still don't. And no one's ever said, oh man, Hugo, what a movie. And that's like 9 years now. 9 years and counting. The Wolf of Wall Street, 2013, which is a 3-hour movie that I saw in a packed cinema. Remember those? And I found it to be very, very funny, but I've never watched it again. And Silence, aka You're Talking Too Loud, 2016, which as discussed before, I have not seen. So he did those movies before returning to The Irishman. In September 2014, after years of development hell, Pacino confirmed that the film would be Scorsese's next project after Silence. Pacino confirmed it. Pacino, obviously, was moonlighting as Scorsese's PR person. In October 2015, De Niro stated that the film was still happening. Yeah, it's still happening. And could have started filming in 2016, with Steven Zaillian confirmed as screenwriter. De Niro also served as a producer for the film. In July 2017, it was reported that the film would be presented as a series of flashbacks of an older Frank Sheeran, depicted as recollecting his many criminal activities over several decades, with De Niro appearing as young as 24 years and as old as 80. So that's the span of ages for him in this. Producer Irwin Winkler, longtime producer of Scorsese, has produced many movies and De Niro movies as well. That one, Guilty by Suspicion, which I saw when I was very young and didn't realise it was about the blacklist and didn't know anything about that whole McCarthy committee for un-American activities. Basically, they were trying to find the Reds under the bed. And maybe they found some, but not the ones that they thought. Producer Irwin defined the project as the coming together of people that have worked together since we were kids together. That's a quote from him, and there's a lot of togethers in that sentence, 3 in fact. While Rosenthal said that what will surprise you is, as a Scorsese movie, it is a slower movie. It is guys looking at themselves through an older perspective. Now, not really selling it to the female audience there by saying it's a slow movie about men looking at themselves being old. Now, financing and budget. It was financiated. In May 2016, Mexican production company Fabrica de Cine had offered $100 million to finance the film. And through that deal, Paramount Pictures would retain domestic rights. Okay. Domestic rights, very important. Paramount Pictures is the film company with the big mountain that in all the Indiana Jones movies match dissolves to a mountain on screen. IM Global was also circling to bid for the film's international sales rights. And STX Entertainment, now they sound exciting, bought the international distribution rights to the film for $50 million, beating out other studios like Universal, 20th Century Fox and Lionsgate. while Fabrica di Cine closed the deal and Paramount retained its domestic rights. By February 2017, Paramount Pictures had dropped domestic distribution rights for The Irishman following the announcement that Fabrica di Cine would not be financing the film due to its climbing budget. They thought $100 million was enough. Netflix then bought the film rights for $105 million. I love that. They didn't offer $100 million, which is what Fabrica di Cinema had. Oh wait. So they bought the film rights for $105 million. I read that wrong. That's not the budget. And agreed to finance the film's $125 million budget with a projected release date of October 2019. In March 2018, it was also reported the film's budget had ballooned from $125 million to $140 million, due in large part to the visual effects needed to make De Niro, Pacino and Pesci appear younger at various points throughout the film. By August of that year, speculation had arisen that the cost had reportedly risen to as much as $175 million by the time post-production would have wrapped, and some publications asserted that it might go as high as $200 million. So no one really knows for sure. We do know that, the international domestic rights were bought for $50 million, and Paramount was looking to get the domestic rights in collaboration with Fabrica di Cine, who offered the budget of 100, and like Netflix, like $105 million for all the rights, and we'll give you $125 million. And then it went to 140, went to 175. It might have been 200, and we won't know. We'll never know. I doubt that they really made their money back, but I think Scorsese was just like, yeah, I'll do it for a streaming site because I just want to make this movie. In August 2019, it was reported that the film's official cost was $159 million, which seems likely, maybe. Like, because he didn't shoot for ages. It's a long movie, but he shoots quickly. He knows how to make movies. Like, effects-wise, that's a lot of money for effects. Anyway. However, reports on the production budget have continued to vary, occasionally noted as high as $250 million, with Jeff Schneider of Collider saying, I don't know what he sounds like. Here's my thing. I think he's one of those kind of geeky nerd boys who complains when they don't get tickets to The Rise of Skywalker. You weren't missing anything. So Jeff Snyder, quote, "No one is on the same page on the budget for this film. And let me tell you what that means. It means the budget is way higher than any of you are imagining." So the budget goes beyond your imagination and how you engage your imagination with budgets for epic crime films. So, onto the writing. In July 2009, Brandt received a phone call from De Niro. This is about the book, obviously. That led to a meeting later between the two of them. In 2009, De Niro met up with the writer of the book. I met with De Niro, he met with Scorsese and screenwriter Steven Zaillian. The meeting was supposed to last an hour, but ended up lasting 4 hours. So, just like the movie. Brandt said that the material was new to them, and Zaillian already had a script ready, but the additions Brandt made required a do-over. To help, Brandt handed over a screenplay of his own. Brandt said, quote, "Zaillian is a great writer, don't get me wrong. I wanted to log the material. In the opening credits, and as a reflection of the writing adaptation process, the final film is titled I Heard You Paint Houses, the name of the novel on which the picture is based, while the title The Irishman appears only in the end credits." Okay. The truthfulness of Sheeran's supposed confessions in the book on which the film was based has been challenged by, quote, The Lies of the Irishman, an article on Slate by Bill Tonelli, as well as by Jimmy Hoffa and the Irishman, a true crime story, a book by legal scholar Jack Goldsmith, which appeared in the New York Review of Books. Not the New York Book of Views. That's a different thing. Chip Fleischer, the publisher of I Heard You Paint Houses, wrote a detailed reply to Tonelli's piece, calling it irresponsible in the extreme, not to mention damaging. In an interview, De Niro defended the writing process of the film by stating, "We're not saying we're telling the actual story, We're telling our story. And it's taking our time. Casting. The casting director for the film was Ellen Lewis, who was also the casting director in 4 other Scorsese films. In July 2017, Pacino and Pesci officially joined the cast, with Ray Romano also joining and Bobby Cannavale and Harvey Keitel in final negotiations. Pesci was offered his role a reported 50 times before agreeing to take part, at first saying he did not want to do, quote, the gangster thing again, while Scorsese tried to persuade him the Irishman would be different, longer, and also you're playing a totally different, you're not playing a hothead, for one, which confused a lot of people and maybe disappointed some people, but like, he's an actor and a good one, so forgive him if he doesn't blow a fuse in everything he's in. De Niro played a big part in convincing Pesci to take the role, telling him, we gotta do this, who knows if there'll be anything after. So saying basically, we're old, we either do this now or we die. He didn't hold a literal gun. He held a gun of emotion that was full of his own mortality. That was the bullets. In September 2017, Jack Houston, Stephen Graham, Dominic Lombardozzo, Jeremy Luke, Joseph Russo, Catherine Daniel, and all these other people joined the cast. So more people joined the cast. Action Bronson was revealed to be in the cast. Action Bronson, can't get over that name. The Irishman is the 9th feature collaboration between De Niro and Scorsese. Can I name all 9 off the top of my head? Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, New York, New York, The King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino, that's 7. I can't think of any other ones. What are old Scorsese movies? Oh, Raging Bull. Raging Bull is it. That's it. That's the one I missed. So this is the 9th one. Yeah, I got them all. I missed Raging Bull, which was the one that De Niro won his Best Actor Oscar for. So it's the 7th to start with De Niro and Pesci, following Raging Bull. Oh, there, it's actually written there now. Once Upon a Time in America, Goodfellas, A Bronx Tale, Casino, and The Good Shepherd, which was the last movie that Pesci was in, directed by De Niro, which I have not seen. And it's the first time Pacino has been directed by Scorsese. Scorsese said of finally working with Pacino, I'd been waiting to work with Al for years. Francis Coppola introduced me to him in 1970. See, that's funny because Scorsese's not too sure how to say Coppola's name or Coppola's name, and some people are unsure as how to say Scorsese's name or Scorsese's. Then he's in The Godfather 1 and 2, and he's in the stratosphere. For me, Al was always something unreachable. We even tried to make a film in the 1980s but couldn't get the financing for it. I said, what's he like to work with? Bob De Niro said, oh, he's great, you'll see. Wow, great insight there, Bob. Scorsese added that there is a meta aspect to seeing Pacino and De Niro interact in The Irishman, saying, what you see in the film is their relationship as actors, as friends, over the past 45 years. There's something magical that happens there. During filming, a posture coach was hired to instruct De Niro, Pacino and Pesci on how to comport themselves like much younger men. That absolutely, definitely was evident in the scene where a 40-year-old Frank Sheeran, played by a 70-something-year-old Robert De Niro, kicks a man in the street. Unbelievable. One of the most unintentionally funny scenes I've ever seen. Scorsese envisioned the film as having an old-fashioned look, which cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto accomplished by using a series of look-up tables for each scene. A look-up table, of course, is a table where you look up things and see how old-fashioned they are. I don't know what a look-up table is. Sherlock summarised the filming approach used for each historical decade depicted throughout the film, stating, the 50 set scenes have a Kodachrome look. The The 60s set scenes have an Ektachrome look. The 70s set scenes have a silvery layer plastered over them, and any scene set in the 80s and onwards have a bleach bypass look, and are also more desaturated than the other scenes. Desaturation, we're getting into really the minutiae of film. The film was shot primarily on 35mm. So shot on film, and with red heliums for sections shot on digital. So some stuff was shot on digital, with 2 IR-capable Arri Alexa Minis as witness cameras for the de-aging. All scenes that required de-aging effects were shot digitally with a custom 3-camera rig they call the 3-headed monster. Primarily shot in 35mm film, which is for anything where they didn't need digital de-aging. So all the kind of later stuff set in the 80s, where the actors are closer to their actual old age. Sandy Powell and Christopher Peterson were costume designer and co-designer respectively. Speaking about Scorsese, Powell said, "One of the things he said on a first meeting was that we weren't doing the same kind of gangsters as Goodfellas or Casino. These weren't flashy peacock looks. We were doing a low-key version. I mean, there are some obvious mafia types in there, but half of that is the way these people hold themselves." The film had a total of 250 characters and 6,500 extras, said Peterson, with Powell adding that you need a lot of research, a lot of hard work, and you need to just get down and do it. You basically have to sort of divide your brain up into those 5 different decades and approach it as if there are 3 or 4 films in one. You're filming more than one decade in one day, and that's when you'd have to really know what you were doing. Editor Thelma Schoonmaker: Marty wanted to show the banality of the violence. It's not like the incredible camera moves or flashy editing of the earlier movies. Victims are killed in an instant, often in very simple wide shots. And his brilliant idea of slamming the titles in front of the audience, describing how various mob characters die, was a way of showing that being part of the mafia is not a good idea. Yeah, that was a nice aspect of the movie where people are talking and it just kind of pops up their name, how they died, where they died, like shot 8 times in the head in his kitchen. So, that was nice. Visual effects. Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and visual effects supervisor Pablo Hellman handled the effects for the film. In August 2015, Scorsese and De Niro made a test reel by recreating a scene from Goodfellas to see if the de-aging could work. And I think that scene was the scene after the Lufthansa heist. And De Niro's one of the guys comes in, and he's got his wife a fur coat, and he's bought a new car. And De Niro's all, "What did I tell you? You don't buy anything." I think that's the scene that they reshot. Scorsese said that the risk was there, and that was it. We just tried to make the film. After sitting on the couch for 10 years, we finally had a way. By the time the film was released, Pacino was 79 years old, with De Niro and Pesci both 76. Scorsese and De Niro made the decision not to use motion tracking markers, which are the little dots that they have on people's faces that you've probably seen if you've seen any behind-the-scenes footage of them shooting movies with lots of special effects. Maybe you haven't, but it's just tracks on your face to basically what it means to track your motion and how your face is moving and how the skin is moving. So then they can put a digital skin over it and have corresponding markers that move. Hellman said he's not going to wear a helmet with little cameras in there, because that's what they have, as well, little cameras that shoot the face as you're acting. He's going to want to be in the moment with Joe Pesci and Al Pacino on set with no markers on him. So if you're going to capture the performance, how are you going to do that? Scenes that required the de-aging visual effects were shot digitally with a custom 3-camera rig, 3-headed monster. Hellman and his team had spent 2 years analysing old films to determine how the actors should look at various ages. And still, they didn't do it as good, I think, as some deepfakes have done on YouTube. Soundtrack. Robbie Robertson and music supervisor Randall Poster I thought his name was Randall Poser there for a second. Randall, who's a poser. But no, it's Randall Poster compiled the soundtrack and not the poster. It features both original and existing music tracks. Robbie Robertson obviously was in The Band, which featured in The Last Waltz, a documentary music film from Mr. Scorsese. Speaking to Rolling Stone, Robertson said, "This is probably the 10th film I've worked on with Marty, and every time we do it, it's a whole new experience. The music score for The Irishman was an unusual feat. We were trying to discover a sound, a mood, a feel that could work over the many decades that the story takes place." Robertson also wrote the score for the film, although only his theme from The Irishman appears on the soundtrack. In December 2019, IndieWire reported that Robertson would be ineligible for an Oscar nomination for his original music used in the film due to the presence of too many high-profile hit singles featured in the film's soundtrack. 2 tracks Robertson wrote for the film that appear in the credits, I Hear You Paint Houses and Remembrance, were included on his 2019 album Cinematic, spelled Sinematic. Cinematic. Very good. Audience viewership. According to Nielsen, which is the ratings board, founded by actor Leslie Nielsen, The Irishman was watched by 17.1 million people in its first 5 days of digital release in the United States, including 3.9 million on its debut day. While the overall total was lower than previous Netflix originals such as Bird Box, which I still haven't seen, 26 million over its first week in December 2018. I haven't seen Bird Box because I heard it was terrible. Critical response. On review aggregate Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 96% based on 439 reviews. Completely meaningless. With an average rating of 8.78 out of 10. Writing for Time, Stephanie Zacharek gave The Irishman a perfect score, calling the film clever and entertaining to the point where you may think that's all it's going to be, and that its last half hour is deeply moving in a way that creeps up on you, and it's then that you see what Scorsese was working toward all along. I agree. She also added that the de-aging is distracting at first, but the special effects are hardly a deal breaker, and in the end they probably add to the movie's mythological vibe. I agree with that as well. I think the de-aging was distracting for the first 15-20 minutes, but then you just forget about it. And honestly, you do, because it's not showy and front and center. There are a couple of times where it looks a bit dodgy, and they look a bit too cold and emotionless, like robots. Owen Gleiberman of Variety called it a coldly enthralling long-form knockout, a majestic mob epic with ice in its veins. Interpretations. In his critical comments on the film, and after noting Scorsese's many contributions to the mobster and gangster film genre, Nicholas Rappold of the Lincoln Center Film Society interpreted the many themes of the film to deal more with the subject of the remorselessness sociopathic and psychopathic killer than with themes directly related to organised crime. After comparing the film to David Cronenberg's A History of Violence, Rappold stated, Frank is not psychopathic, but sociopathic. Whichever the case, one might ask how unusual Frank in The Irishman is meant to be. Oddly enough, people in recent years have been spending quite a bit of their spare time watching killers, and in situations outside the usual context of law enforcement. Watching or rewatching assorted acclaimed TV series, I couldn't help noticing how many zero in on people for whom killing is routine. The Sopranos, The Americans, which I haven't seen, Barry, which I have seen and I love, Mindhunter, which I've seen the first series of and some of the second season, but not all, Killing Eve, which I have to watch, Dexter, which I've never watched and don't really have an interest in. There's also The Apocalyptic Strand, in which almost everyone has already died, like The Leftovers. Very often these shows return to the hollowing out that is felt through the destruction of human life and through the maintenance of the double life required to insulate that pursuit. So yeah, I would agree with that. Now, he compares it to David Cronenberg's A History of Violence, which is based on a graphic novel. I know stars Viggo Mortensen, Ed Harris, and Viggo Mortensen is like a hitman who's trying to live a normal life with a family. And Ed Harris comes back in and he knows him from his old life. And he starts to kind of put the pressure on him. What's that phrase that they use in gangsters? Put the shakes on him, put the squeaks on him, put the clamps on him, put the squeeze on him, something like that. It's one of those things or none of them. So yeah, I would say it definitely has this similar kind of themes. Like, can someone escape their past? Is someone just doomed to be the way they are? I don't think that Viggo Mortensen's character in A History of Violence is particularly sociopathic or psychopathic. It's more Ed Harris, but he's got like his face is scarred and his eyes blinded, so he's kind of like a Bond villain or something. He's a little bit unbelievable, but then it does come from a comic book, or the grown-up version of a comic book, which would be a graphic novel, which is just as good as a regular novel. It's like a book, but it's all pictures. Like if Moby Dick, just every picture was a massive white whale on every page was a picture of that. Richard Brody, writing for The New Yorker, found the film to be a dark allegory of American politics and American society, stating, "The real-life Hoffa was a crucial player in both gangland politics and the actual practical politics of the day, and the movie's key through line is the inseparability of those two realms. The Irishman is a socio-political horror story that views much of modern American history as a continuous crime in motion, in which every level of society, from domestic life through local business, through big business, through national and international politics, is poisoned by graft and bribery, shady deals and dirty money, threats of violence and its gruesome enactment, and the hard-baked impunity that keeps the entire system running." In his extended comments on The Irishman, Guillermo del Toro, the Mexican sometime horror filmmaker, well, I mean, he won an Oscar with a movie, The Shape of Water, that was the creature from the Black Lagoon falls in love with a woman. It's the creature from the Black Lagoon meets She's All That. That's The Shape of Water, which is not a great movie. I don't think it's that good. Guillermo found the thematic content of the film and its depiction of character development to be comparable to the films of Renoir, Bresson, Bergman, Olivier, or Kurosawa. Using cinematic techniques, I know some of those but not all of them, involving interconnected flashbacks and flash-forwards, Del Toro found Scorsese's juxtaposition of the ruthless gangster depicted in Frank Sheeran with his diminished elderly self as compelling depictions of where, quote, oblivion reigns supreme. Now there's something to get tattooed across your chest. Del Toro's thematic emphasis, as he attributes it to Scorsese, is the portrayal of the demise of Sheeran in the frailty of his old age, as overshadowing the ruthless and relentless accumulation of his criminal activities which defined his more youthful years, with old age transforming Sheeran into a forgotten shadow of his former self. Now, that I would agree with. So, guys, that is The Irishman Wikipedia, which is much shorter than the actual movie, which is 3.5 hours long. Things to say. I said Scorsese likes to kind of rattle through them. This was his longest ever shoot, 108 days. His longest movie, and the longest theatrically released movie in 20 years. I don't know what was longer. I think even Titanic was like only 3 hours. Or not even 3 hours. Well, probably around 3 hours. Anyway, guys, I have been reading this from Wikipedia. I have given €2 of a donation for reading this. If you can help out Wikipedia, give them a €2 donation. It's the least you can do. It's the least I did, because I've been using their page for the content of this podcast. If you want to check out my podcast, Edwin Salmon of Knowledge, it is available wherever you get good podcasts. I hope you are sleeping soundly now. I hope you have lovely dreams. And I will see you the next time you're going to sleep. Good night and goodbye.